This is some water on fire out of Texas. This is a water pollution case in Parker County, Texas, where the family has a 4-foot flame coming out of their water well, and the Texas regulators tell them that it is safe to drink and use. This is a fracking pad in Colorado that was emitting a huge black cloud, but that's basically what a fracking operation looks like out in the middle of the farmland there. Right next to that, they're growing all kinds of food, and here we have who knows what kind of pollution or toxification happening there. What you see there is the top of the gas well. That's what they call the Christmas tree. That's what's applied there after they have finished fracking, and that's what the fracked gas comes through. This is a wider look at that same gas pad. You see these everywhere in places where fracking is going on. We're not very used to it in California, but if you travel in places like Pennsylvania, Texas, Colorado, Ohio, New Mexico, you will see riding out all over the place. It's pockmarked, basically, with these kinds of facilities. And you can see there the Rockies in the background. It makes quite the backdrop. Colorado has seen quite a lot of pollution related to these cases, and they would like to see less, I'm sure, but they are still pushing forward with fracking, and this is around Weld County, where we are in that shot. It's very distressing, actually, when you drive out through there, and we're used to, like, if you drive out in the Central Valley, it's beautiful, and then 20 miles later it's beautiful. Colorado will look like that. That is the kind of, who knows what that is. I tried to turn that into, Colorado has the COGCC, and I turned that into them to let them know pollution was happening. They did not seem interested. This is again the Parker County case, and because there is so much, that's a water well. That is a water well. There is so much methane. That water well has about 90% methane. And so as that methane comes out, he actually accidentally lit it there and is having a very difficult time putting it out, which, as I was filming, I was fairly freaking out about. The EPA OIG actually put out a report on this particular case and was supposed to bring restitution to this homeowner. No restitution ever came, and the EPA basically flipped him off and told him that he was just not going to get any help. This is Dr. Zachariah Hildenbrand. He is an environmental scientist who did testing. This is some live testing that's happening at the water well. This was just to prove to the EPA that actually this pollution was that bad. And we made the film, we sent it to the EPA's OIG, and they contacted this homeowner back and said, yeah, well, even though it was illegal for them to do so, they stepped out of the case. And so eventually that homeowner signed an agreement with Range Resources, who polluted his water, and now he is unable to speak about his case. So that's what happens if you actually end up getting restitution. You do have to exchange your First Amendment rights to be able to get some kind of compensation for what's been done to you. So he's no longer able to talk about the case, but I am, and I do.
Well, welcome to Voices from the Village. And my name is Jill Cody. I'm host here today with Hope for Peace. And Hope, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got interested in this?
You bet. I started researching fracking-related pollution back in 2014, and I have been around the country to many, many, many different states. and researched and lived on these properties for the past 5 years, and just recently released a full-length film on the topic called Blowout, Who's Next? The High Price of Fracked Gas.
And that website is blowoutthefilm.tv.
That it is. Thank you so much. And that film will be available to be purchased at $3.99 a view within the next couple of weeks on that website, so people will be able to see it. And then the wonderful thing about the film is all of the proceeds from the film go to the victims that you see in the film. So we kind of were lucky we were able to fund it as we went.
Good.
And so any proceeds that we get, we're giving back to
And
the
you're showing it
victims.
locally too.
Yeah. So we have a showing coming up as part of the climate strikes that are happening. So in Santa Cruz, 14 different groups have gotten together to plan actions around global climate strikes. And that's the week of September 20th through the 27th. So there's many events happening, which people can keep an eye out for. We've been running ads in the good times. You won't be able to miss us. There'll be lots of flyers and things where you can participate. But on the 24th of that week at the Grange at 7 o'clock, we'll be having a showing as part of the whole Climate Strike Week.
Is this free?
Yeah,
to the public?
it is, and it's by donation if you want to add in a little. Yeah, but that's
So
free to the
what's the
public.
future of fracking?
Terrifying. Horrifying.
Yeah, we laugh hysterically.
Far longer than it should be. So as we speak, a lot of people are not aware, but we are expecting the second fracking boom. We just had a fracking boom that started from about 2007 and went up through about 2016. And now they're planning the second build-out, which will include a lot of LNG export. So that's
liquid natural gas.
Natural gas, liquefied natural gas, which is actually going to be more and more fracked gas. There was an era when we had conventional drilling, and you could sort of stick the straw in the ground, and your hydrocarbons would sort of come right up. Now we have fracking, and so you have to go in with horizontal drilling and do quite an expensive process, which eventually then will get that hydrocarbon out of the shale. And as we begin to export LNG, it will be more and more just fracked gas, because that's really about all that's left. So as we speak, corporations around the world are signing contracts to supply liquefied natural gas and expanding that market. So Rick Perry has been out to different nations, kind of being the front end of the PR for these companies and getting more and more contracts.
Rick Perry, the person who's head of the Department of Energy who wanted to shut it down.
Well, he couldn't remember the name of the thing
but that
he
was
wanted
the
to
department
shut
he wanted to shut down.
but he did end up being head of that.
So how is fracking being branded? It's being branded as...
Right. The reason that they're able to kind of get away with this idea of a fracked gas future is industry is selling everyone on the idea that this is clean energy. So
like
we
clean
hear,
coal.
Right,
No such thing.
Yes, exactly. So you hear about clean natural gas. In fact, the buses in Santa Cruz, you will see it says natural gas, clean natural gas. It sounds so good. In reality, there is still carbon emissions from burning natural gas, but also there's methane leakage during production. So all of the time from when they bring it up out of the ground, it goes into a pipeline or a truck, however that works, it goes out to where it's going to be processed, if it's going to be a power plant or if it's going to get onto a ship, methane leaks. And the leaking is a little bit more than they probably say.
It's leaking into the air, but also into the water.
Yes, it can pollute water. That is actually true.
I remember Rex Tillerson with his ranch in Texas didn't want any fracking around his home. Remember that? He got rid of the fracking sites around his own home.
Yes, they wanted to build a water tower in their very expensive neighborhood that would hold fracking water, and they did not allow that.
That's right.
True. But Rex Tillerson also lied quite a bit, as did industry, about that water pollution, saying consistently that there's never been a case of water pollution related to fracking. And so now as they tell us that fracked gas is clean, we might want to remember that they have lied prolifically in the past. And imagine that maybe it isn't so much.
Well, they don't have any incentive to tell the truth because it's all about profit. There's no incentive to tell the truth.
Well,
people need
Saving
to...
the human race ought to be an incentive, but I
does
agree
it
with
seem
you that
to
it is
be
not
an
an
incentive?
incentive.
No.
It is not. No, it is not an incentive. And so in the United States, we have a disagreement about how much fracked gas leaks here. Industry says it's 1.2%. When scientists go out and look, they find 3%.
Didn't you interview scientists around the
did.
world or United States?
In the
about
United
this? Yeah.
States, I interviewed quite a few scientists who are publishing on this topic, and their consensus was that this was not going to be a brilliant idea. We're basically about to wrap the planet in a global methane industry as an answer for climate change. So we have too much greenhouse gas driven warming, and so as a way to answer that, we're going to put out more greenhouse gas. It is possible that we are losing our minds. I imagine that sometimes when I look at the case.
What's that definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome?
Yeah.
So we're now doing a second round of fracking boom? Yeah.
Yeah. And so across the world, we have Sempra is one of our companies, but we're signing contracts to get pipelines into Mexico. Cheniere just signed a contract to get LNG into China. So the idea is to grow that market for methane.
And they do that by branding it as it's not toxic, it doesn't hurt the water, it doesn't hurt the air, it's fine to breathe. It's
In fact, Rick Perry has been out on a new lie tour. Touting the idea that
I like that phrase, lie tour.
He's on a lie tour. It's true. I've seen him on TV very, very frequently on many different channels, talking about how natural gas has lowered our emissions, that the United States has lowered our total emissions. What he leaves out is that lowering of emissions really happened around the recession. So their talking point is, we've lowered our emissions 15% since 2005. It's just a creepy way of working with the numbers. In 2018, our carbon emissions went up by 2.3%. So our carbon emissions are rising. Methane globally is rising, and methane is one of the most warming greenhouse gases.
You were explaining how much more over a 10-year period. Tell us about that.
Years. Yeah. Over the 10-year period, methane is 100 times more warming than carbon. The industry likes EPA to use the stretch of time over 100 years, in which it's only 24 times more warming. Well, that's very deceptive because methane leaves the atmosphere within a little more than 9 years, 10 years. So why would you gauge it at 100 years when it isn't even there then? Because you want a lower number so you can fool people and move forward with what could be the most catastrophic decision that we as humans have made. What will happen when that warming hits and there's no way to stop it? The permafrost is already exploding. Some people have not heard, and if you haven't heard yet, you should go look up Yamal, Y-A-M-A-L, blowholes. And so there's 700 of these huge craters that you could fit the Empire State Building in that have exploded because the permafrost is already melting and blowing up. But at the same time, we're putting in a natural gas export plant in Yamal.
At the same time, we're burning the rainforest, not we, but Bolsonaro and Brazil is burning the rainforest.
We have more degradation.
Which is a double problem because the rainforest is a carbon sink, but forest fires puts carbon in the air, so we're losing the sink and putting more in the air at the same time.
Definitely going in the wrong direction. And when you see the leaking methane, I think immediately it hits you how serious this is. And I actually did a little short film, which I think Brian might be able to cue up when he has a minute. And we could look at, I put together about 3 minutes, just to give you an idea of what this is like.
We're in 36 different countries now shipping LNG. I think we got 4 facilities up and going. There's a couple of more online along the Gulf Coast. So infrastructure is the name of the game, Joe. I will tell you, you're seeing a lot of infrastructure.
Welcome to the fracked gas future. By 2040, the world will see a 45% rise in fracked gas use.
In fact, natural gas production is at an all-time high, and reserves are so large that they are predicted to meet domestic demand for almost a century.
But fracked gas is 95% methane. Methane is far more warming than CO2. And methane leaks. Many nations have shale gas deposits that they will frack. Some are not regulated. They could be a free-for-all for frackers. How much methane will leak per year once the new fracking boom explodes? No one knows. Even in the US, scientists can't agree on how much fracked gas leaks during production. 1 million new fracked gas and oil wells are planned for the United States, plus the infrastructure to get all that gas to market. Is a new global methane industry really the answer to too much greenhouse gas emissions? Is methane an answer to climate change? If you listen to the gas and oil industry and their supporters, the answer is yes.
The development of natural gas is one of the greatest opportunities for economic security, national security, and environmental security. The development of the shale revolution, which we're in the midst of now, is the single most important energy development in the global energy scene since the discovery of the East Texas field in the 1930s. For the U.S., this is unqualified good news.
By the use of cheap, plentiful, and reliable energy from fossil fuels, we have made our environment cleaner.
If you use a little common sense, the answer is obviously frack no.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Hope for Peace and fracking. Frightening fracking. So how is the industry justifying this?
Well, they start with the lie that it's going to be good for climate, that the leakage is really low. And one argument that they make is methane is their product. So of course they don't want to let it leak, they say. Mm-hmm. So they say, oh, well, you know, as we go forward, we'll be naturally inclined to try to keep all of that methane and keep the leakage low. This sounds very logical.
They won't be inclined to do
well,
that.
Actually, it's true. There's a floor where the cost to try to get that last 4% to not, you know, keep that in the piping and all of the kinds of mechanisms that are needed are more expensive than just letting the gas go. That last little 4% of gas is not that valuable to them. It's probably right around 4%, I've heard many industry officials say. So it's just cheaper for them to let that 4% go. And for me, if companies in the United States are admitting this,
to 4%.
Yes, up to 4%. Then, as I'm imagining, there are other nations, many nations around the world that have shale that are going to tap. Algeria, Colombia, Iran, many places that do not have good environmental regulation. If I know that it's cheaper here for them to let that last 4% go, I know it's going to be cheaper when you're dealing with, you know, small companies who are trying to make money just, you know, fracking that well in Algeria or wherever they are, where no one's looking, to just let that 5-6% go, because it is less expensive for them to just let that escape. So that's a very terrifying thought.
Just the price of doing business. So what's the Trump administration's position on this?
Oh, so bad. Prostrate in front of the gas and oil industry with the knee pads.
Not surprised.
Yes. So that's a very scary thing to think about. Really what the Trump administration is doing is setting a precedent. They just loosened methane regulations this week. And it's very interesting because they say, well, they don't even need the regulation. Companies, they don't even need the regulations. They just do this by themselves. And then they say at the same time, well, we had to take away the regulations because they're too expensive. So both of things cannot be true at the same time. We know that they've just been friends with the gas and oil industry all along, and basically there's ways in which the GOP is the gas and oil party. And so they're there to give industry anything they want. And of course, Trump is bright enough to understand that snow refutes science. So that's the level of, or that windmills cause cancer. It's terrifying. It's a horrifying situation. There is something we can do about it that's very exciting that I plan on working on for the next year, and that is creating climate voters. Because people who look closely know that we have either already reached potentially the tipping point, or possibly we have not yet.
There are several. We've passed some already,
some
but there's
really
some
big ones.
Yeah, coming.
Yeah. But another 4 years of full blessing, you know, to this fracking future. In my opinion, having spoken with scientists who are publishing on these leakage rates, this is
So how are you going to go about
idea.
creating climate voters, making it #1?
I'm going to start with the film that I made to begin with, and we're actually starting quite a bit here in Santa Cruz. We're working through the climate strikes that are coming up, and then we're also starting a large interfaith group to try to get people focused. Mostly we want to reach out to people who are outside the environmental movement. So it's a good question. If anybody has great ideas, they can always find me. If you type Hope for Peace in your Google, you can find my YouTube and my website and all kinds of things and contact me. But mostly the climate strikes that are coming up are really important for that, and that's going to be the focus.
Well, at least for me, we're past global warming, we're past climate change. The climate has changed. We're now talking about it being a climate crisis or climate emergency. So I think we need to use the language that also creates urgency in people so that they realize this should be the #1 thing they vote on and be a climate voter in the future. And the question is how do we do that in the red states? You know, California and the blue states are pretty much there, but it's helping the red states see this. So what do you think people should, I'm thinking of keep, stop, start. What should people keep doing?
Keep paying attention. Keep reading up on this. If you just go sit for a minute and put in LNG export and read about what's happening right now, get yourself...
LNG again is liquefied natural gas.
Yeah, liquefied fracked gas is what it really should be.
And keep your head because it can be overwhelming, I think. And I like to say be outraged. Keep your outrage, but make a constructive outrage.
Yes.
So that's why it's good to vote and find out the companies.
Come out to the climate strikes.
Come out to the climate strikes.
And we have
14 events.
Yes, we have Extinction Rebellion is in Santa Cruz now. We have
and
350.
in Monterey. Yep.
Oh, very good. And so that's growing. And actually getting together with people that are fighting this is really healing. And it's a wonderful thing to do.
And
so
it's building a
definitely
community
do
around
that.
this.
It is.
And then what should people stop doing?
Stop thinking that natural gas is clean.
Right.
It isn't.
Stop falling for the branding.
Stop falling for the branding.
Because the branding is just to sell you on the propaganda about it. And what should people start doing?
Start looking for my film online. I think that would be great. Blowoutthefilm.tv. It's going to be up at $3.99 a view, and it'll give you a much bigger, better, deeper idea of what's happening here. And even just visiting the website, we have pages
That's
where you can study.
Blowoutthefilm.tv.
Yep, you got it.
All righty.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts?
Even though I have been working in this, topic for about 5 years, I still have a lot of optimism. I think that we are smart creatures, and if we decide to, we can get ourselves out of this mess and create a much better future where we can have clean, real clean energy that's free feedstock. We don't have to frack to get the sun to shine on our roof, and this is much smarter.
Well, there's more jobs in solar and wind industry now than in coal.
Yes.
So this is the future in solar and wind. It's
Absolutely.
just we need to move the subsidies from the oil industry and the gas industry over to the solar and wind
Get us
industry.
moving in the right direction and making sure that happens by making
And
sure we're
voting for
climate
people who
voters.
do that.
Yes, climate voters. Make
Yep.
climate voters. Yeah, I would say that would be it.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching Voices from the Village.
Welcome to the fracked gas future. By 2040, the world will see a 45% rise in fracked gas use.
In fact, natural gas production is at an all-time high, and reserves are so large that they are predicted to meet domestic demand for almost a century.
But fracked gas is 95% methane. Methane is far more warming than CO2.
message has got to get out. The majority of the people in this country don't understand what's going on. They are lied to by their elected leaders and by the industry. This is mostly going to affect our children. It's going to condemn our children to a hell on earth as they deal with the ramifications of climate change.
This is the future. This is the world's fossil fuel future. At least that's what the global gas industry is banking on.
U.S. gas being sold to Europe.
Cheniere Energy has finally secured its first long-term contract with China
and around the world to serve a growing demand for liquefied natural gas.
So we think there's a portfolio of opportunities.
And you want a pure play on exporting LNG around the world.
By 2040, global natural gas use will rise more than 45%.
And we're going to put our shoulders to the task and try to get as much American LNG into the European community as we can.
It is estimated that 1 million gas and oil wells will be drilled and fracked to supply America's new LNG export industry, along with all the infrastructure to process the gas and get it to market.
We shouldn't be sacrificing people for our energy needs, and that's like the bottom line.
We have 1 million gas and oil wells planned to be drilled and fracked across the country over the next 10 years. We're ramping this up because we're expecting a 45% increase in natural gas use globally. And what they want to do is feed the export terminals. So what we're going to be doing, what we're actually doing right now, is we're launching the global methane industry, because fracked gas is 95% methane. And so we're looking at 1 million gas and oil wells across the country, plus compressor stations, dehydration stations, compressed gas stations, export terminals, pipelines. All of that is going to be going into America's backyard. So basically, we're kind of warning people, if you're not aware of what happens when that goes wrong, you should see this film. Blowout, the film. .tv. That's Blowout, the film, all one word, .tv.